Sweat dripped onto the metal floor of the training observation deck. Cadet Rin wiped his 4 hands across his armored face and tried to steady his breathing. Around him, 200 cadets from across the galaxy waited in tense silence. They all knew what today meant. The Galactic Military Academy on Station Kepler 7 had broken stronger beings than any of them. Rin had seen it himself during his first week. A Horgath warrior, standing nearly 3 meters tall with muscles like starship cables, had quit after the psychological conditioning program. A Felian pilot with reflexes fast enough to dodge laser fire had washed out during navigation training. The Academy did not care about your species' reputation. It cared only about results. Rin flexed his primary arms and felt the chitinous plates of his exoskeleton shift and settle. His people, the Valtorians, had served in the Federation military for 6 generations. They were known throughout the galaxy as shock troops and heavy assault specialists. 4 arms meant 4 weapons. Natural armor meant surviving hits that would kill softer species. Rin had grown up hearing stories of Valtorian heroes who had held defensive positions single-handedly against overwhelming odds. He needed to live up to that legacy. His family expected it. His entire clan expected it. Beside him stood Cadet Prell, a Drenix whose species evolved on a world with gravity 3 times standard. Prell's bones were so dense that he had to wear special boots to avoid damaging the station's floors. His skin had a gray, stone-like texture. When he moved, it sounded like rocks grinding together. Prell spoke rarely, but when he did, others listened. His people were famous for being nearly indestructible. On Rin's other side was Cadet Silas, a Krenar whose insectoid body contained hydraulic fluid instead of blood. Her species could lift 5 times their body weight, using biological pressure systems that human engineers still struggled to fully understand. Silas kept tapping her feet in a nervous rhythm, her compound eyes reflecting the harsh overhead lights. "Stop fidgeting," Rin muttered to her. "Easy for you to say." Silas clicked back. "Your people have been doing this for generations. Mine only joined the Federation 30 years ago. Then prove they made the right choice by accepting your species," Prell rumbled. The observation deck overlooked the main training ground, a massive space filled with obstacles designed to test every physical capability imaginable. Ropes hung from the ceiling thick as a human's torso. Walls rose 30 meters high with minimal handholds. Narrow tunnels snaked through artificial hills. Balance beams stretched over pits that dropped into darkness. Everything was built to galactic safety standards, which meant it was designed to challenge species far stronger and more durable than most humans could imagine. At the front of the observation deck, drill instructor Chiron stood like a statue carved from granite. The instructor's species, the Thorians, came from a heavy world environment where the pressure at sea level could crush an unprotected human flat. Chiron had served in 3 separate galactic conflicts and had the scars to prove it. One of the instructor's eyes was a mechanical replacement that glowed a dull red. Half of Chiron's jaw had been rebuilt with metal after a plasma grenade had exploded too close during the Meridian campaign. Nobody joked around Chiron. Nobody slacked off. Nobody wanted to be the cadet who earned the instructor's personal attention. "Listen carefully." Chiron's voice boomed across the observation deck without any electronic amplification. "Below you is the Endurance Gauntlet. Every cadet in this academy faces it during their first month. Most of you have heard rumors about it. Some of those rumors are true. Most are exaggerated. The reality is both simpler and harder than whatever you have imagined." Chiron gestured toward the training ground below with a massive clawed hand. "You will each carry a load pack calibrated specifically for your species' physiology. These packs account for your gravity adaptation, your muscle density, your skeletal strength, and every other biological factor that makes your species unique. The weight will be proportional to your capabilities. This means the test is equally difficult for everyone." Rin felt his stomach tighten. Equally difficult meant they had calculated exactly how much a Valtorian should be able to carry. There would be no room for weakness, no room for error. "The course must be completed in sequence," Chiron continued. "Rope climb, tunnel crawl, wall ascent, balance beam crossing, weight carry across open ground. Any cadet who drops their pack is disqualified. Any cadet who skips an obstacle is disqualified. Any cadet who accepts physical assistance is disqualified." Silas made a small clicking sound of distress. Prell's stone face remained impassive, but Rin noticed the Drenix's hands had curled into fists. You are probably wondering about the purpose of this exercise, Charon said. The red mechanical eye swept across the assembled cadets. This is not truly a pass-or-fail examination. The Endurance Gauntlet exists to teach you the single most important lesson you will learn at this academy. You need to understand your limits. You need to know exactly how far you can push before your body breaks. In real combat, overestimating your capabilities gets your entire unit killed. Charon paused to let that sink in. Nearly all of you will fail to complete the course. This is expected. This is normal. What matters is that you try your absolute hardest, and that you recognize when to call for extraction before you injure yourself permanently. Medical drones will be standing by. Use them if needed. There is no shame in understanding your limitations. Rin barely heard the last part. Nearly all of you will fail. Not him, he would not fail. He could not fail. The cadets began filing down to the training ground level. Rin moved with the crowd, his forearms swinging in unconscious preparation for the physical strain ahead. He noticed other cadets doing similar things. Prell was rolling his massive shoulders. Silas was testing the pressure in her hydraulic limbs. As they descended, Rin caught sight of someone he had not noticed before. A human cadet stood near the back of the group, quiet and unassuming. Rin knew humans were rare in the academy. Their species had only made contact with the Federation 15 years ago. Their home world was barely developed by galactic standards. They had no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no biological weapons or defenses. The human looked small compared to species like Rin or Prell. Soft-skinned, fragile. Rin wondered briefly why the Academy had even accepted a human applicant. What could such a weak species possibly contribute to the Federation military? The human caught Rin staring and gave a small nod. Rin turned away, embarrassed to have been caught. It did not matter anyway. The human would probably fail in the first few minutes of the course. Best to focus on his own performance. They reached the training ground floor. The obstacles looked even more imposing from ground level. The rope stretched up into shadows. The tunnel entrance was barely wide enough for Rin to fit through even without a pack. The wall seemed to touch the ceiling of the massive chamber. Instructors moved among the cadets, directing them to their assigned pack stations. Each station had a pack sized and calibrated for specific species. Rin found his station and stared at the pack waiting for him. It was massive, easily 1.5 meters tall and 0.5 meters wide. The material was some kind of reinforced synthetic fiber that would not tear or deform under stress. He reached out with 2 of his hands and tested the weight. Heavy. Very heavy, but manageable. It had to be manageable. Around him, other cadets were doing the same thing. He heard Silas make a distressed chirping sound when she felt her pack's weight. Prell simply stared at his pack in silence, his stone face unreadable. Charon's voice boomed across the training ground. First group, prepare yourselves. You begin in 5 minutes. Show me what your species is made of. Rin took a deep breath and lifted his pack. Rin was the 4th cadet to start the course. He had watched 3 others go before him, and none of them had made it look easy. A Velcran cadet with triple-jointed legs had stumbled during the rope climb and barely caught himself. A Prexian with 6 limbs had managed the rope, but had spent nearly 10 minutes in the tunnel, emerging with her carapace scraped and bleeding. A Gordal heavy worlder had simply stood at the base of the rope for 5 minutes, trembling under the weight of his pack, before the instructors called it and extracted him. Now it was Rin's turn. He approached the rope with all 4 arms free, the pack strapped tight across his back and shoulders. The weight settled into his center of gravity, and he felt his exoskeleton creaking under the pressure. He wrapped 2 hands around the rope, planted his feet, and began to climb. The first few meters were manageable. His Valtorian physiology was built for this kind of work. 4 arms meant he could maintain 3 points of contact while moving the 4th. His natural armor distributed the pack's weight across a larger surface area. He pulled himself upward, hand over hand, feet finding purchase on the rope's surface. 10 meters up. Then 15. The pack seemed to grow heavier with each meter gained. His breathing came harder. The muscles in his shoulders and back began to burn. 20 meters. Rin looked down and immediately regretted it. The ground seemed very far away. The medical drones hovered nearby, their sensors locked onto his vital signs. He kept climbing. His people had done harder things than this. Valtorian soldiers had scaled cliff faces under enemy fire. They had hauled artillery pieces up mountains. They had held positions when every instinct screamed to retreat. 25 meters. His arms were shaking now. Not from fear. From exhaustion. The pack's weight was crushing down on his spine. He could feel his exoskeleton plates grinding against each other. He reached the top of the rope and grabbed the platform with one trembling hand. For a moment he just hung there, trying to gather the strength to pull himself up. His forearms coordinated in a desperate heave, and he rolled onto the platform, gasping for air. No time to rest. The tunnel was next. Rin crawled to the entrance and peered inside. It was dark, cramped. He would have to go through on his stomach with the pack scraping against the tunnel's ceiling. His exoskeleton would protect him from the worst of it, but it would not make it comfortable. He crawled inside. Immediately, the pack caught on something above him. He had to twist and wriggle to free it. The tunnel was barely tall enough even without the pack. With it, every movement was a struggle. His exoskeleton plate scraped against the tunnel walls with a horrible grinding sound. He pulled himself forward using his forearms inches at a time. The darkness pressed in on him. His breathing echoed in the enclosed space. The pack's weight was crushing him down against the tunnel floor. He could not use his legs effectively in this position, which meant his arms had to do all the work. All four of them burned with effort. Halfway through, he got stuck. The pack wedged against a low point in the tunnel ceiling. Rin pushed and pulled, but nothing moved. Panic flickered in his chest. He forced it down. Panic would not help. He twisted onto his side, managed to shift the pack's angle by a few degrees, and resumed crawling. He emerged from the tunnel on shaking limbs. His exoskeleton was scraped raw in several places. Green blood seeped from cracks where the plates had been damaged. His breathing came in ragged gasps. The wall loomed ahead. 30 meters of vertical climbing with minimal handholds. Rin approached it and stared upward. His arms felt like dead weight attached to his shoulders. His back was screaming in pain from the pack's pressure. He reached for the first handhold. His fingers closed around it. He pulled himself up. Reached for the next hold. Pulled again. 5 meters up, his primary right arm gave out. The muscles simply stopped responding. He hung there by 3 arms, scrabbling for a foothold to take some of the weight. His exoskeleton was cracking under the strain. He could hear it. Small pops and clicks as the biological armor reached its structural limits. He tried to reach for the next handhold. His arm would not move. He tried again. Nothing. The strength was simply gone. Rin looked down. The ground was far below. The medical drones were moving closer, sensing his distress. He looked up. 25 more meters, impossible. Extraction, he gasped. His voice was barely audible. I need extraction. The drones moved in immediately. Support cables descended from the ceiling and attached to his harness. The tension came off his arms gradually as the cables took his weight. They lowered him slowly to the ground where instructors were waiting. Kieran approached as Rin collapsed onto his back, the pack finally removed. How far did you think you could go? The instructor asked. All the way, Rin managed between gasps. That is what I expected you to say, Kieran replied. Your species always expects to succeed through sheer determination. But biology does not care about determination. Your exoskeleton has stress fractures. Your muscles have torn. You pushed past your body's warning signals and injured yourself. This is exactly the lesson you needed to learn. Rin lay there, humiliated and hurting, while other cadets took their turns on the course. He watched Silas the Krynar make it through the tunnel only to seize up completely during the wall climb. Her hydraulic systems overloaded from sustained pressure. Instructors had to physically cut her pack off before they could extract her. Prell, the massive Drenix, fared worse than anyone expected. His incredible density and bone strength worked against him in the tunnel. He got 3 meters into it before his own weight combined with the pack's weight simply crushed him down. He could not move forward or backward. It took 4 instructors and specialized equipment to pull him out. His stone-like skin was cracked and bleeding from the pressure. One by one, cadets failed. A Hormak with 6 legs and redundant muscle groups made it farther than most, but collapsed during the balance beam section. A Tellarian with an internal support skeleton simply could not lift her pack at all. A Vorish speedrunner got through the rope and tunnel through sheer agility, but lacked the strength to climb the wall. Each failure was different. Each cadet hit their limits in different ways, but the result was always the same. Medical drones, extraction. the walk of shame back to the observation area. Hours passed. Rin sat with the other failed cadets and watched the carnage continue. More than 50 cadets had attempted the course. Not one had completed it. The closest anyone had come was a Horthak warrior who made it to the balance beam before his 3 hearts simply gave out from the strain. Charon had been right. The course was designed to break them. Designed to teach them their limits in the most brutal, direct way possible. Rin's pride was wounded worse than his body. He had genuinely believed he would succeed where others failed. He had believed his species' reputation would carry him through. It had not. He was just another failed cadet now. Just another example of someone who had pushed too hard and injured themselves. The day wore on. Fewer cadets volunteered to try the course after watching so many fail. The observation deck grew quiet. Even the usually boisterous species fell silent. Finally, near the end of the day, Rin noticed the human cadet approaching the course. David Torres was his name. Rin remembered it now from the roster. The human looked even smaller standing next to the obstacles. His skin was unarmored. His frame was light. He had only 2 arms instead of 4 or 6. Rin felt a pang of sympathy. The human had no chance. None at all. The course had broken species 10 times stronger. What hope did a soft-skinned mammal from a barely developed world have against obstacles designed to challenge the galaxy's strongest? David strapped on his pack. The instructors had calibrated it for human physiology, whatever that meant. David adjusted the straps, rolled his shoulders, and approached the rope. He began to climb. Rin watched without much interest at first. The human would fail just like everyone else. It was just a question of when and how badly he would hurt himself doing it. But David kept climbing. His movements were smooth, economical. He was not trying to muscle his way up the rope like Rin had. Instead, he was using some kind of technique that distributed the effort across his entire body. His legs did as much work as his arms. Each movement flowed into the next without wasted energy. He reached the top of the rope, pulled himself onto the platform, immediately moved to the tunnel entrance without pausing to rest. Rin sat forward, suddenly paying attention. David entered the tunnel. Minutes passed. Rin expected to hear the grinding, scraping sounds of someone struggling like he had. Instead, there was only silence. Then David emerged from the other side. His pack shifted forward in a way that had allowed him to stay lower and move more efficiently through the confined space. The human approached the wall. This was where he would fail, Rin thought. This was where raw strength mattered more than technique. You could not trick your way up 30 meters of vertical climbing. Your muscles either had the power or they did not. David began to climb, and kept climbing. His movements were deliberate and careful. He found handholds that Rin had not even noticed. He used his legs to push as much as his arms to pull. He rested his weight on his skeleton rather than his muscles whenever possible. 10 meters, 15, 20. The entire observation deck had gone silent. Every cadet was watching now. Every instructor was watching. David reached the top of the wall. He pulled himself over the edge and stood up. His chest was heaving and his face was covered in sweat, but he was standing. He was still going. Rin could not believe what he was seeing. It was impossible. The human should have failed already. He had to fail. Everyone failed, but David did not fail. He crossed the balance beam with careful steps. He carried his pack across the open ground to the finish line. He set it down gently and stood there, breathing hard but still standing. Complete silence filled the training ground. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Rin looked over and saw it was Silas, her compound eyes wide with shock. Then Prel joined in, his massive hands creating sounds like thunder. Then Rin found himself clapping too, all 4 hands coming together in applause that echoed through the massive chamber. David Torres had done the impossible. The soft, weak human from the barely developed world had succeeded where every other species had failed. Dr. Halna had been studying xenobiology for 43 standard years. She had dissected specimens from over 200 different species. She had written papers on muscle structure, skeletal density, cardiovascular efficiency, and metabolic pathways that were required reading at every major Federation university. She thought she understood how biology worked across the vast spectrum of galactic life. Then a human completed the endurance gauntlet. and everything she thought she knew suddenly seemed inadequate. She sat in her laboratory 3 days after David Torres's achievement, surrounded by holographic displays showing comparative biological data. Every screen showed the same impossible conclusion. Humans should not have been able to do what David did. The door to her lab opened. Charon entered, ducking slightly to fit through the frame. The drill instructor looked tired, which was unusual. Thorians could go days without rest when necessary. "Have you found an explanation yet?" Charon asked. Halna gestured at the screens with 3 of her tentacles. Her species, the Morphians, were primarily aquatic and had developed tentacles instead of arms or hands. "I have found many explanations. None of them make sense when considered individually. Together, however, they paint an interesting picture." She manipulated one of the displays, bringing up a comparison chart. "Look at this. Valtorian muscle tissue compared to human muscle tissue. The Valtorian sample is 3 times more efficient at producing force per gram of tissue. A single Valtorian muscle fiber can lift significantly more than a human equivalent. Which means humans should be weaker," Charon said. "Correct. Now look at this." Halna switched displays. Drenic skeletal structure compared to human skeletal structure. Drenic's bones have a density rating of 9.7 on the Mohs scale. They are literally as hard as some minerals. Human bones rate a 6.3. They are comparatively fragile. Again, humans should be at a disadvantage. Exactly. One more example. Another display appeared. Krenar hydraulic systems compared to human cardiovascular systems. The Krenar can generate sustained pressure of over 300 bar in their limbs. Humans can barely manage 1.6 bar in their blood vessels. By every individual metric, humans are weaker, more fragile, and less capable than most species we test. Charon's mechanical eye focused on her. Yet David Torres completed a course that broke cadets from all those stronger species. How? Halna allowed herself a small gesture of satisfaction. She had figured it out. Because humans are not built for individual excellence in any one area. They are built for something else entirely. Watch this. She pulled up video footage of David completing the course. Notice his breathing. It never becomes truly ragged until the very end. He is sweating profusely, which most species would consider a sign of distress. But for humans, sweating is the most efficient cooling system in the known galaxy. He can maintain high activity levels for extended periods without overheating. She advanced the footage. Look at how he moves during the rope climb. He is using a technique that transfers energy from his legs to his arms through his core muscles. The energy is not just being generated. It is being stored and released through his tendons with each movement. Human tendons are remarkably elastic. They act like biological springs. Another section of footage appeared. The tunnel crawl. Notice he shifts his pack forward and changes his posture. This distributes the weight completely differently than someone like Cadet Rin attempted. Humans have extremely flexible spines with natural curves that can adapt to different load distributions. Most species have rigid spines optimized for one particular posture. Charon watched silently as Halna continued her analysis. The wall climb is the most interesting part. Watch his face. You can see he is in significant pain. His muscles are burning. His body is screaming at him to stop. But he does not stop. This is not because humans do not feel pain. They feel it acutely. It is because their brains have an unusual ability to override their body's safety protocols. That sounds maladaptive, Charon observed. Pain exists to prevent injury. Under normal circumstances, yes, but humans evolved under unusual circumstances. I pulled up data on their homeworld, Earth. The planet has a remarkably varied and hostile environment. Humans evolved as persistence hunters in one of the more challenging biomes. They would select prey and then chase it for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Halna brought up a simulation. The prey would be faster, stronger, better adapted to escape. But humans had one advantage. They never stopped coming. Their cooling system let them run during the heat of the day when other predators had to rest. Their efficient metabolisms let them maintain pursuit for enormous distances. Their psychological ability to push through discomfort meant they continued long after the prey's survival instincts told it that safety should have been reached. Charon was quiet for a long moment. They are persistence predators. I have heard of such species before, but never one that became sapient and developed technology. Exactly. And that persistence translated into every aspect of their biology. Humans do not have the strongest muscles, but their muscles can work continuously for hours with minimal rest. They do not have the most powerful hearts, but their cardiovascular systems are incredibly efficient at sustained activity. They do not have the highest pain tolerance, but their brains can consciously choose to ignore pain signals in ways most species cannot. Halna pulled up another chart. Most species hit a biological wall when they reach their limits. A Valtorian's muscles will lock up to prevent tendon damage. A Drenix's cardiovascular system will force them to stop before their hearts are damaged. A Krenar's hydraulic system will automatically shut down to prevent ruptures. These are safety mechanisms, automatic responses that prevent catastrophic injury. But humans? Charon asked. Humans have those safety mechanisms too. But their prefrontal cortex can override them. Not completely. They still get injured if they push too far. But they have a much wider range where conscious will can force the body to continue despite its protests. This is what allowed David to complete the course. He reached his limits multiple times, but each time he chose to push through them. Charon turned away from the displays and looked at Halna directly. Is this common among humans? Or is David Torres exceptional even among his species? Based on historical data from Earth, this ability is universal among healthy humans. Some are better at it than others, but the basic capability exists in all of them. They used it to spread across their entire planet, adapting to environments from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts. They used it to build civilizations in places where survival should have been impossible. They used it to accomplish tasks that should have required generations, but instead took years through sheer sustained effort. Halna paused. There is a phrase in human culture. Several human cultures, actually. But the meaning is consistent across them. They say that success comes not from being the strongest or the fastest, but from being too stubborn to quit. Stubbornness as a survival trait, Charon said. Unusual. More than unusual. Potentially very valuable. Think about military applications. We have always valued species that can hit hard or move fast or take damage. But what about a species that simply refuses to stop? That can march for days without rest? That can maintain operations long after every other species has exhausted itself? Charon's mandibles clicked together in a gesture that indicated deep thought. The Federation military is going to want to recruit more humans. I suspect you are correct, but there is something else you should know. Halna pulled up one more display. I asked David to attempt a test with a Valtorian calibrated pack. I wanted to see how human capabilities compared when facing a load designed for a much stronger species. That seems dangerous. It was. I had medical teams standing by, but David agreed to try. The display showed footage from earlier that day. David approached a pack 3 times the size of the one he had carried during the endurance gauntlet. He lifted it with obvious strain and began the course. He did not complete it. He made it 3/4 of the way through before his body gave out completely. But he had carried a load designed for a species with 4 arms and natural armor across obstacles that had broken Cadet Rin, with only 2 arms and unarmored skin. Impossible. Charon breathed. I thought so too. But the footage does not lie. Humans can push themselves far beyond what should be biologically possible. The concerning part is that David did not stop when he should have. He did not call for extraction when his body reached its limits. He collapsed because his muscles literally failed. The medical team had to intervene. Halna met Charon's gaze. This is the danger of human psychology. The same trait that allows them to achieve remarkable things also means they are at high risk of injuring themselves through overexertion. They need to be taught when to stop, because their instincts will not necessarily tell them. Charon nodded slowly. I will incorporate that into training protocols. Though I suspect teaching a human when to quit will be more challenging than teaching most species when to push harder. Probably true, but necessary. Humans are going to change things here at the Academy. Word is already spreading. Other cadets are asking David to teach them his techniques. They want to learn how to push past their limits the way he did. Can other species learn human persistence? Halna considered the question carefully. Not to the same degree. The biological and psychological factors are too deeply integrated into human evolution, but they can learn some of the techniques. The efficient movement patterns. The load distribution methods. The breathing control. Those things are transferable. She looked back at the displays, at the impossible data showing a species that should not have been able to compete doing exactly that. Humans have been part of the Federation for only 15 years. We are still learning about them. Every time we think we understand their capabilities, they surprise us again. Kairon turned toward the door, then paused. Dr. Halna, in your professional opinion, how dangerous are humans? Halna thought about persistence hunters chasing prey across endless savanna, until it collapsed. She thought about a species that had survived and thrived in nearly every environment their planet offered. She thought about David Torres pushing himself until his body failed rather than stopping when any other species would have. I think, she said slowly, that they are more dangerous than anyone realizes, but not in the way you might expect. They are not dangerous because they are strong or fast or well-armed. They are dangerous because they do not know how to give up. And anything that cannot be stopped will eventually overcome any obstacle in its path. Rin found David in one of the smaller training rooms a week after the endurance gauntlet. The human was running on a treadmill, sweat soaking through his training uniform. The display showed he had been running for over an hour at a steady pace. Most species would have needed several rest breaks by now. How do you do that? Rin asked. David glanced over, not breaking stride. Do what? Run for that long without stopping. My people are built for quick bursts of activity, heavy combat, short duration, maximum output. After 20 minutes of running, my muscles start to lock up. But you have been going for over an hour. David slowed the treadmill to a walking pace, his breathing heavy but controlled. Different evolutionary paths, I guess. My ancestors needed to cover long distances to find food and water. Running for hours was just part of survival. Rin flexed two of his forearms. His exoskeleton had healed from the stress fractures he got during the gauntlet, but the memory of failure still stung. I wanted to ask you something. About the rope climb. I saw you use a technique with your legs that took pressure off your arms. Could you teach me that? David stepped off the treadmill and grabbed a water bottle. He drank deeply before answering. Sure, though I am not sure how well it will work with your body structure. You have 4 arms, but your legs are proportionally shorter than mine. The leverage will be different. I want to try anyway. They moved to the rope climbing station. David demonstrated the technique, wrapping the rope around his leg in a specific pattern that created a stable platform. When he pulled with his arms, his legs bore some of the weight. When he pushed with his legs, his arms could rest briefly. Rin watched carefully, then attempted to replicate it with his own body. His extra arms made some parts easier, but his shorter legs made other parts harder. After several attempts, he found a variation that worked for his physiology. You are a good teacher, Rin said, breathing hard after his 10th practice climb. David shrugged. I am just showing you what worked for me. You are the one adapting it to your own body. That is the hard part. Over the next few days, other cadets approached David with similar requests. Silas wanted to learn the breathing techniques he used during sustained exertion. Prell wanted to understand how David had crawled through the tunnel without getting stuck like he did. A Hormak cadet with 6 legs wanted to learn about load distribution for multi-limbed species. David helped them all. He never acted superior or boastful about his success on the gauntlet. He treated each request seriously and tried his best to adapt human techniques to alien physiologies. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it did not. But he never made anyone feel stupid for asking. Rin started training with David regularly. The human woke early before station dawn and went to the training rooms when they were nearly empty. Rin began joining him. They would run together, though Rin could only maintain David's pace for about 20 minutes before needing rest. They practiced climbing. They worked on the obstacle courses. Why do you train so much? Rin asked one morning after a particularly grueling session. You already proved yourself on the gauntlet. You could coast for a while. David was stretching, pulling his arm across his chest in a way that looked uncomfortable. Coasting is how you get weak. My grandfather used to say that the moment you think you are good enough is the moment you stop improving. Your grandfather was military? No, he was a farmer. Grew soybeans in Argentina, but he lived through some hard times and learned a lot about persistence. David switched to stretching his other arm. He used to tell me that talent is common. Work ethic is rare. The people who succeed are not always the most gifted. They are the ones who keep showing up when everyone else has quit. Rin thought about his own family's expectations, the weight of Valtorian military tradition. My people value strength above almost everything else. We have sayings about power and dominance and victory through force, but none of them helped me complete the gauntlet. Strength is useful, David said, but it is not the only thing that matters. You have advantages I will never have. 4 arms means you can do things I cannot. Your exoskeleton means you can take hits that would put me in the medical bay. We are just built for different challenges. Then why did you succeed where I failed? David finished stretching and stood up. Honestly, I think it is because my people learned to redefine what winning means. For us, winning is not about being the strongest or finishing first. Winning is about still being there when everyone else has given up. It is about taking one more step even when everything hurts. Silas joined their training group a few days later. The Kreenar had been struggling with sustained physical activity because her hydraulic systems would overheat during extended exertion. David suggested she try interval training, alternating between high intensity and recovery periods. It worked better than her previous approach of trying to maintain constant output. How did you know that would help? Silas asked, her compound eyes reflecting curiosity. I did not know for sure, David admitted, but human athletes use similar techniques to prevent overheating. I thought it might translate to hydraulic systems. Your biology is different, but the principle of heat management is the same. Prel was harder to help. The Drenix's density made everything more difficult for him. He was strong, incredibly strong, but moving his own mass took enormous energy. David watched Prel struggle through the obstacle courses for several days before making a suggestion. Stop trying to use the same techniques as everyone else. Your body is completely different. You need to find approaches that work specifically for you. Like what? Like using your density as an advantage instead of fighting against it. On the balance beam section, everyone tries to move quickly and lightly, but you cannot do that. You are too heavy, so do not try. Move slowly and deliberately instead. Turn your mass into stability rather than trying to overcome it. Prel tried it. He stopped attempting to rush across the balance beam and instead took careful, measured steps. His incredible density meant that once he planted his foot, nothing could shift it. Wind resistance did not affect him. Small movements did not throw off his balance. He was like a boulder rolling slowly but inevitably forward. He made it across the beam for the first time. Thank you, Prel said, and his stone face almost looked like it was smiling. The training group grew. Soon there were a dozen cadets from various species meeting with David in the early mornings. Karan noticed and said nothing, but instructors started observing the sessions. The techniques David taught were being incorporated into the Academy's formal training curriculum. One evening, Rin, David, Silas, and Prel sat together in the station's observation lounge. Through the massive windows, stars wheeled slowly past. Ships moved in the distance, their running lights tiny points of color against the darkness. I have been thinking, Rin said carefully, about why the gauntlet broke so many of us. I think we were all trying to prove something. To ourselves, to our families, to our species. We were carrying more than just the physical weight of the packs. Silas clicked her mandibles in agreement. I was so focused on not being the first Kreenar to fail that I did not think about proper technique. I just tried to muscle through everything. Same, Prel rumbled. My people do not quit, so I pushed until my body could not physically continue. I did not fail because I was not strong enough. I failed because I did not know when to adjust my approach. They all looked at David, who had been quiet during this exchange. What were you thinking during the gauntlet? Rin asked. David was silent for a long moment, watching the stars. I was thinking about my brother. He died 3 years ago in a training accident on Earth. He was going to be a pilot, wanted to explore the galaxy, meet alien species, see everything humanity had just discovered. The others waited. David continued, his voice soft. He never got that chance. So when I was out there on that course, hurting and exhausted and wanting to quit, I thought about him, about how he would never get to do this. And I decided that quitting would be disrespectful to his memory, so I did not quit. I am sorry, Silas said quietly. Thank you. But my point is that I was not thinking about proving anything to anyone. I was just thinking about putting one foot in front of the other, taking the next step, and then the next one, I broke the challenge down into the smallest possible pieces and focused only on those pieces. Not on the big picture. Not on the weight of the pack or the height of the wall. Just the next step. Rin considered this. You were not trying to be a hero. No, I was just trying not to let my brother down. Which maybe is the same thing, but it felt different in the moment. It felt personal rather than performative. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. Then Silas spoke up. David, can I ask you something about human culture? Sure. You said your people redefine what winning means, that it is about persistence rather than dominance. But humans have wars, do they not? Conflicts where strength and violence determine outcomes. We do, David acknowledged. More than we should. But even in war, the side that wins is not always the strongest. It is often the side that refuses to surrender. The side that keeps fighting when logic says they should quit. Human history is full of smaller forces defeating larger ones through sheer determination. That sounds exhausting, Prell observed. David laughed. It is. Humans are tired a lot of the time. But we are also still here. Still pushing forward. Still trying to see what is beyond the next horizon. Rin looked at his human friend and thought about persistence as a philosophy. His people celebrated strength. David's people celebrated endurance. Neither was better or worse. Just different approaches to the same fundamental challenge of survival. I am glad you are here, Rin said. You are teaching us things our instructors never could. I'm just showing you what works for me, David replied. You are all taking those lessons and making them your own. That is what really matters. Not copying someone else's techniques, but understanding the principles and adapting them to your own circumstances. More cadets approached their group over the following weeks. David taught them what he could. Rin helped translate the techniques for species with multiple limbs. Silas worked with cadets who had fluid-based physiologies. Prell helped the heavy worlders understand how to use their mass effectively. Charon watched it all and said nothing. But everyone noticed that the next endurance gauntlet session had a significantly higher completion rate. Cadets who had trained with David's group were succeeding where others had failed. The human from Earth was changing the academy, one persistent step at a time. The challenge came from the senior cadets during meal period. Rin was eating with David when a group of 5 upperclassmen approached their table. Leading them was Horvath, a Talaxian in his final year at the academy. Talaxians were tall, heavily muscled, and known for their aggressive nature. Horvath had a reputation for being particularly difficult. So you are the famous human, Horvath said, looming over their table. His species had ridge plates along their skulls that flared when they were agitated. They were flaring now. David looked up calmly. I am a human, yes. Not sure about famous. You completed the endurance gauntlet. First cadet this year to do so. Very impressive. Horvath's tone made it clear he thought it was anything but impressive. Though some of us have questions about how you managed such a feat. Questions like what? Like whether your pack was properly calibrated? Human physiology is poorly understood. The Academy has limited data on your species. Maybe the weight was calculated incorrectly. Maybe your pack was significantly lighter than everyone else's. Rin started to stand, all 4 arms tensing. That is an accusation of cheating. David put a hand on Rin's arm. It is fine. Let him talk. Horvath smiled, showing teeth designed for tearing meat. I am not accusing anyone of intentional cheating, just suggesting there may have been errors in calibration, honest mistakes, easy to make with an unknown species. So what are you proposing? A demonstration. You attempt the gauntlet again, but this time carrying a pack calibrated for a known species. If you succeed, it proves your original achievement was legitimate. If you fail, it proves the calibration was wrong and your completion should have an asterisk next to it in the records. Other cadets in the dining hall had stopped eating. Everyone was watching now. David could feel the weight of their attention. He thought about his brother, about persistence, about what his grandfather would say. Okay, David said simply. Horvath had clearly expected argument. He recovered quickly. Okay, just like that? Just like that. Pick the species. I will attempt their pack. Horvath's smile widened. Valtorian. 4-armed armored species. Natural strength significantly beyond human baseline. If you can complete the gauntlet with a Valtorian pack, I will personally apologize and acknowledge that your original completion was earned. Rin made a distressed sound. David, that is the pack I could not complete. It is designed for someone with 4 arms and an exoskeleton. You cannot. I can try, David interrupted. He looked at Horvath. When? Tomorrow, midday, in front of the entire academy. Unless you want to back out? I will be there. Horvath and his group left, laughing among themselves. Rin immediately turned to David. Why did you agree to that? It is impossible. I failed with my own species pack, and I am biologically designed for it. You cannot succeed with a load meant for 4 arms when you only have 2. Probably not, David agreed, still eating calmly. But refusing would mean everyone always wonders if Horvath was right. This way, at least we will know for certain. Silas joined them, having witnessed the confrontation. This is a bad idea. You could seriously injure yourself attempting to carry that much weight. I will stop if it becomes truly dangerous, David said. But I have to try. Not because I care what Horvath thinks, but because I need to know my own limits. I pushed myself on the gauntlet, but I never found my actual breaking point. This will show me where that is. That evening, David trained alone in one of the smaller gyms. He was not preparing technique or strategy. He was preparing mentally, visualizing the course, imagining the weight, accepting that he would probably fail and deciding that was okay. The door opened. Karan entered, mechanical eye glowing in the dim light. I heard about tomorrow's challenge, the instructor said. News travels fast. Always does in a military academy. I am here to tell you that you do not have to do this. Horvath is trying to embarrass you. The calibration on your original pack was verified by 3 separate systems. There was no error. I know, David said. But this is not about Horvath anymore. It is about seeing what I am actually capable of. I completed the gauntlet with my own pack, but I was not pushed to my absolute limit. I had energy left at the end. That means I do not actually know where my maximum is. Karan studied him with that unnerving mechanical eye. Most species try to avoid finding their absolute limits. Pushing to maximum often results in injury. Probably. But how can I improve if I do not know where I am starting from? How can I train effectively if I do not understand my baseline? Very human logic, Karan said, and it almost sounded like approval. For what it is worth, I think you will fail tomorrow. The Valtorian pack is designed for a completely different body structure, but I also think you will fail in an interesting way. I am curious to see how far you get. Not exactly a vote of confidence. I do not give false confidence. I give honest assessments. My honest assessment is that you will surprise everyone tomorrow, even if you do not complete the course. That will be valuable in its own way. After Karan left, David continued his mental preparation. He thought about persistence hunters on the African savanna, about humans climbing mountains and crossing deserts and surviving in environments that should have killed them, about his brother, who never got the chance to push himself this far. He thought about taking one step and then another, until there were no more steps to take. The next day, the main training ground was packed. Word had spread throughout the academy. Cadets from all years crowded the observation deck. Instructors lined the walls. Even some visiting Federation officers had come to watch. Horvath stood near the starting line looking confident. Rin, Silas, and Prell stood together looking worried. Dr. Halna was present with her medical team, monitoring equipment already active. David approached the Valtorian pack. It was massive, easily twice the size of the pack he had carried originally. Designed for 4 arms to distribute its weight, designed for an exoskeleton to protect the spine from compression, designed for a species significantly stronger than humans. He strapped it on. The weight settled onto his shoulders and back like a collapsing building. His knees almost buckled. He locked them, adjusted the straps as best he could, and took a breath. Whenever you are ready, Karan announced to the silent crowd. David approached the rope. Each step was an effort. The weight was crushing. He could feel his spine compressing, his shoulders being pulled downward. This was already harder than anything he had attempted on the original gauntlet. He grabbed the rope with both hands. Normally, he would use his leg wrap technique to distribute the weight, but the pack was so heavy that his legs could barely support him even on solid ground. Climbing would have to be almost entirely upper body strength. He pulled himself up. His arms screamed in protest. The pack's weight tried to drag him back down. He pulled again. Made it a meter off the ground. Then 2 meters. The crowd was absolutely silent. Every being present understood what they were watching. This was not about competition or pride anymore. This was about a human being testing himself against impossible odds. 5 meters up. David's arms were shaking. His grip was starting to slip. Sweat poured down his face. Every muscle in his upper body was burning. 10 meters. His breathing was ragged. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. The weight was compressing his chest, making it hard to draw full breaths. 15 meters. He was moving in centimeters now. Each pull upward took everything he had. His hands were losing feeling. His shoulders felt like they were being torn from their sockets. He made it to 20 meters, which was farther than anyone expected. Farther than should have been possible with the weight he was carrying. Then his left hand slipped. For a moment he hung by one arm, the pack's weight swinging him sideways. He grabbed desperately with his left hand again, caught the rope, steadied himself. He tried to pull up one more time. His arm simply did not respond. The strength was gone. Not reduced, not weakened, gone. His muscles had reached their absolute limit and refused to contract further. Extraction, he gasped. Medical drones swarmed immediately. Support cables lowered. They took his weight gradually, carefully protecting his arms and shoulders from the sudden release of tension. They lowered him to the ground where Dr. Halna and her team were waiting. They removed the pack. David collapsed onto his back, chest heaving, arms lying useless at his sides. The medical scanners showed significant muscle strain, minor compression fractures in 2 vertebrae, and dangerous levels of several stress hormones. But he had climbed 20 meters with a pack designed for a species twice his strength. The training ground erupted in noise. Not applause this time. Something more primal. Cadets from dozens of species were making sounds of respect and awe. Some were shouting. Some were stamping feet or striking the ground with tails or limbs. Horvath stood frozen, his ridge plates flat against his skull. He had expected David to fail in the first few meters, to prove that the human's original success was a fluke. Instead, David had proven the opposite. He had shown that even with a massively disadvantaged load, human persistence could achieve the impossible. Charon approached David as the medical team was preparing to transport him to the bay. 20 meters, the instructor said. Cadet Rin made it 5 meters with his own species pack before failing. You carried that same pack 4 times as far with half as many arms and none of the biological advantages. David managed a weak smile. Did not make it all the way, though. No rational being expected you to make it at all. You have proven something important today. You have shown that human limits are far beyond where logic says they should be. Later, after treatment, David lay in the medical bay with Rin, Silas, and Prell visiting. His arms were immobilized to prevent him from aggravating the muscle damage. His spine was being treated for the compression fractures. That was the stupidest thing I have ever seen anyone do, Rin said. Agreed, Silas clicked. Completely stupid. Prell added. David grinned. But did I prove the point? You proved you are insane, Rin said. But yes, you also proved that humans are capable of things the rest of us cannot even imagine. Horvath has not said a word since the attempt. I think you broke his understanding of what is possible. Good, David said, and then winced as the movement hurt his back. Maybe now people will stop assuming they know what humans can or cannot do. 3 months after David attempted the Valtorian pack, the academy looked different. Not physically. The obstacles were the same. The training grounds had not changed. But something fundamental had shifted in how cadets approached their training. Rin watched a new group of first-year cadets preparing for their first endurance gauntlet. They were nervous, as all new cadets were, but they were also doing something he had never seen before his own first attempt. They were helping each other practice the techniques David had introduced. A Morphean cadet was teaching a Hormak about efficient breathing. A Felian was showing a Gordal how to distribute weight across multiple limbs. Species that traditionally kept to themselves were sharing knowledge freely. David stood beside Rin, his arms fully healed now. He had been promoted to a teaching assistant position, working directly with Charon to develop new training protocols. The Academy had officially recognized that human persistence techniques could benefit cadets from all species. You changed this place, Rin said, watching the cadets below. I just showed people a different way of thinking about challenges, David replied. They did the hard work of adapting those ideas to their own capabilities. Do not be modest. Before you arrived, each species trained in isolation. Valtorians taught Valtorians. Drenics taught Drenics. We never considered that techniques from other species might be useful. You broke down those barriers. Below, the first cadet approached the course. A young Talaxian, not unlike Horvath, but with less arrogance. She lifted her pack and began the rope climb using a hybrid technique that combined her species' natural strength with the leg wrap method David had introduced. She made it to the top. She is going to complete it, Rin observed. Probably, David agreed. Completion rates have gone up significantly. Karan says this year's first-term cadets are outperforming historical averages by almost 40%. Because of you. Because they learned to think differently about their limits. I did not give them new physical capabilities. I just helped them understand they were capable of more than they thought. The Talaxian cadet completed the tunnel crawl and approached the wall. She was breathing hard but maintained steady progress. Her ridge plates were slightly flared, indicating stress, but she was far from her breaking point. She climbed the wall with careful deliberation, reached the top, and continued to the balance beam. More cadets followed. Not all of them completed the course, but the failures were different now. Cadets who hit their limits extracted themselves before causing serious injury. They understood that learning where their boundaries were was just as important as pushing past them. Horvath appeared on the observation deck. He had been subdued since David's attempt with the Valtorian pack. His friends said he spent most of his free time training alone, trying to reconcile what he had witnessed with his understanding of how biology worked. He approached David and Rin. For a moment, he just stood there watching the cadets below. I owe you an apology, Horvath finally said. A real one. Not because I lost the challenge, but because I was trying to diminish your achievement out of pride. My species has always been physically dominant in the Federation military. Seeing a smaller, weaker species accomplish something we struggle with threatened my sense of identity. David looked at him calmly. I understand. Every species here has traditions and expectations they are trying to live up to. Sometimes those expectations make it harder to see clearly. You could have refused my challenge. You knew it was a setup designed to make you fail. Yes. But I also knew it was an opportunity to learn something about myself. Even though I did not complete it, I learned where my absolute limits are. That knowledge is valuable. So thank you, actually. Horvath's ridge plates flared in surprise. You are thanking me for trying to humiliate you? I am thanking you for pushing me harder than I would have pushed myself. Without that challenge, I would not have discovered that I could carry a Valtorian pack for 20 meters. I would not have found that boundary. Growth requires testing yourself against difficult challenges. You provided one? Horvath shook his head slowly. Humans are strange. My people would hold a grudge for years over something like that. Some humans would too, David admitted. But grudges take energy that could be used for better things. I would rather train and improve than spend time being angry. The conversation ended when Karan summoned David for an instructor meeting. As David left, Horvath turned to Rin. He really means that, does he not? About being grateful for the challenge? Rin flexed his forearms thoughtfully. David has a different perspective than most species. He sees obstacles as opportunities rather than threats. It is a very human trait. Exhausting trait, Horvath muttered. Yes, Rin agreed, but also effective. I have learned more from training with David for 3 months than I learned in my entire life before the academy. Not because he's a better fighter or stronger than my previous teachers, but because he taught me to think about challenges differently. Below, another cadet completed the gauntlet. Then another. The success rate was remarkable. What had once been a test designed to break cadets and teach them humility had become something else. A genuine measure of capability that cadets could train for and overcome. Later that day, David met with Commander Vreelis, the Academy's director. Vreelis was a Korvath, an ancient species that had been part of the Federation since its founding. The commander's office overlooked the training grounds through a massive window. Sit. Vreelis gestured to a chair designed for human proportions. The office had furniture for dozens of different species. David sat. You wanted to see me, sir? I have received communication from Federation Central Command. They have been monitoring your progress here and reviewing the changes you have implemented in our training protocols. They are impressed. I just helped share some techniques, sir. You did considerably more than that. You challenged fundamental assumptions about physical capability and species limitations. Central Command wants to expand your work. They are proposing a new training program that incorporates human persistence techniques into basic military training across the Federation. David was quiet for a moment, processing this. That is a significant expansion. It is. You would be promoted to an instructor rank and travel to various Federation military facilities teaching these methods. You would work with training staff from dozens of species, adapting human techniques to their physiologies. It would be challenging work. What about my training here? I still have 2 years left in the program. You would receive your certification early based on your contributions. The Federation believes you can do more good teaching than you can finishing standard cadet training. This is not an order. You can refuse if you prefer to complete the program traditionally. David thought about his brother, who had wanted to explore the galaxy and meet alien species. He thought about the cadets below who were succeeding because someone had shown them a different way to approach challenges. He thought about persistence as a philosophy that could spread across hundreds of worlds. I will do it, he said. On one condition. What condition? I want Rin, Silas, and Prel to come with me. They understand how to adapt these techniques for different species better than I do. They have been teaching other cadets here for months. They would be invaluable. Prelis considered this. I will speak with them. If they agree, I will approve it. The Federation needs teachers, not just warriors. Your friends have proven to be both. The meeting ended. David returned to the training grounds where Rin was still watching the new cadets. He explained the offer. You want me to leave the academy? Rin asked. To travel the galaxy teaching species how to push their limits? Only if you want to. It is not required. But I think we could do good work together. Rin thought about his family's expectations, about Valtorian military tradition, about the path he had always expected his life to take. Then he thought about the last 3 months, about learning from a human with 2 arms and no armor, about discovering that strength came in forms his people had never considered. Yes, Rin said, I want to do this. Silas and Prel gave similar answers when asked. Within a week, they were all preparing to leave the academy on their new assignment. On their last day, they stood together watching another endurance gauntlet session. The completion rate was over 60% now. Cadets from species that traditionally struggled were succeeding. The atmosphere was different. Competitive but supportive. Challenging but not cruel. We did something good here, Silas clicked. We showed people they were capable of more than they believed. Prel rumbled. Now we get to do it on a bigger scale, Rin added. David said nothing. Just watched the cadets pushing themselves, supporting each other, learning that limits were often just suggestions rather than absolutes. He thought about his grandfather's words, about work ethic being rarer than talent, about showing up when everyone else quit. Quaron joined them, mechanical eyes sweeping across the training ground. You are leaving behind a significant legacy. This academy will be different because of your time here. The academy was always capable of this, David said. We just helped it realize that potential. Spoken like a teacher rather than a warrior. The Federation needs both. I am glad you have chosen to be the former. They departed the next morning on a Federation transport. The ship would take them to their first assignment, a major training facility on a heavy world colony where integration of multi-species training had been particularly challenging. As they accelerated away from Station Kepler 7, David looked back at the massive structure floating in space. Behind those walls, cadets were still training, still pushing, still learning that determination could overcome tremendous disadvantages. What are you thinking about? Rin asked. My brother. He would have loved this, meeting different species, learning about their cultures, showing them what humans can contribute. He wanted to be part of something bigger than himself. You are doing that for him. Maybe. Or maybe I am just doing what humans do. We see a challenge and we keep pushing until we understand it. We find a problem and we work on it until it is solved. We discover a limitation and we test whether it is real or imagined. Persistence as a philosophy, Silas observed. Persistence as a way of life, David corrected. For humans, giving up is not really an option. We might rest. We might adapt our approach. We might take a different path. But we do not stop. We just keep going until we reach where we are trying to go. Prel looked out at the stars streaming past. The galaxy is going to learn what that means. Every species that trains with us will understand that limits are more flexible than they appear. They will learn to push harder, adapt better, persist longer. And some of them will surpass us, David said. They will take what we teach and combine it with their own advantages. A Valtorian who never gives up is terrifying. A Drenix with human persistence is unstoppable. That is the real goal. Not to make everyone like humans, but to help every species access their full potential. The transport jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, Station Kepler 7 shrank to a point of light and disappeared. Ahead of them, hundreds of worlds waited, thousands of species. Millions of beings who had not yet learned that they were capable of more than they believed. David settled into his seat and closed his eyes. Tomorrow they would begin teaching. Tomorrow they would start spreading the lesson of persistence across the Federation. Tomorrow they would show the galaxy that limits were meant to be tested. But today he rested. Even persistence required knowing when to recover. That was a lesson humans had learned long ago on the savannas of Earth. You could not chase prey forever without rest. You could not push limits constantly without recovery. The key was knowing when to rest and when to run. His friends settled into their own seats. 4 beings from 4 different species, united by a common understanding that achievement came not from being the strongest or fastest, but from refusing to quit when things got difficult. The stars rushed past. The galaxy waited. And somewhere ahead, cadets from species they had never met were about to learn that a human could lift what seemed impossible, not through strength or speed or biological advantage, but through simple, stubborn determination to take one more step. The journey had just begun,